So today I'm joined by Neil Hoyne, Chief Strategist at Google. He's also the best-selling author of Converted, the data-driven way to win customers' hearts, and a global thought leader at the intersection of data, technology, and human behavior. At Google, Neil helps global companies drive digital transformation and apply AI and analytics to strategic decision-making. He also teaches at Wharton Executive Education and serves as a board advisor at Capital G and trustee at Purdue University Global. In our conversation today, I'm hoping to unpack Neil's approach to strategy, how he works with companies, the tools and frameworks he relies on, the technologies he uses in his day-to-day work, and the platforms he recommends to organizations navigating digital transformation. Neil, thanks for joining me today.
Brendan, thanks for having me. Based on that introduction, to all those listening, we'll be here for the next 18 years to cover everything.
Stay tuned.
No, we'll make it simple. We'll make it fun. How can I help you?
So you're Google's chief strategist. First of all, are you the only chief strategist or are there others?
As far as I know, I'm the only one.
Okay.
HR reminds me that I hold a job classification that fewer than a half dozen Googlers actually have.
Oh, okay.
But I typically say this when people ask me what I do. I just refer to myself as a Googler, which is what we all call ourselves as employees. It seems to be in style now that everyone has almost like a family name. Like I've heard there's like MetaMates. I think Pinterest are Pinners, okay. Google are Googlers.
Oh, okay.
As far as I know, I'm the only person that has this role and this scope,
Okay.
Which I consider to be a privilege.
So what does the role actually entail? How do you actually help companies use data and AI?
It's more, and you hit it right there. It's more external than it is internal. So people often think chief strategists must be working purely internally on Google products. It's actually the opposite. So we make most of our revenue working with other companies. So advertising continues to be a very large chunk of our revenue. Cloud is number 2. And oftentimes those companies say, we're trying to navigate change. We're trying to navigate data and technology and increasingly AI. But we only have our own team and our own point of view and our own perspective on the market. And they say, Google, you have the privilege of working across thousands of companies and countless industries and business models. How do we think about these problems? And so oftentimes it's not simply pulling from our data, but it's pulling from the work, in my case, of more than a decade of sitting with these boards and C-levels and seeing how they wrestle with oftentimes having the same data, the same opportunity, and coming to different conclusions. Now, my goal is not to help give them the answer, right? It would be incredibly arrogant for any company to come in to be like, well, hello, it's like, I don't run your airline, but I'll tell you what direction to go. No, we will never understand their business as well as they do.
Right.
But what we can do is help them think through and work through the problem, understand the market dynamics, the competitive dynamics, the blind spots that other leaders miss or identify that could make a serious impact in their strategy. And so we'll often sit down in one of 2 formats. One will be a large format where the company comes together with all their executives and sometimes investors, and they bring us their problems. And we help them work through it. In other cases, it's more ad hoc, where it's not uncommon that it can be 10 o'clock at night on a Thursday, and I'll get a call from a C-level saying, can I get a perspective on this? Because it is lonely. I'll be honest, it is lonely at the top, right? Because if you're a CMO, you can't go to the board for advice because you're supposed to know the answer. And if you're a CMO, you can't really go to your directs and say, give me the answer. But they can come to me, and they can come to my larger team. And that's really the trusted role that we serve. You're up in the middle of the night. You have a strategic problem. You need to get it right. And you need some perspective. You don't not necessarily answers. You need perspective as to how to think about it. And that's kind of the role that I play.
So first of all, you mentioned your team. What is the larger team you're talking about?
The larger team is I'm surrounded by really people who have a similar understanding that I do, but in different domains. So I work with people who are the best in the world at understanding branding and creatives, and some that, given the current state that we're in, specialize really deeply in AI, or in other cases, what we would call performance search, the core search engine in advertising. And those are the experts that can really go a layer deeper than I can to say, look, our problem is specifically that people hate our brand. Or perhaps that we work with investors who want to see immediate returns on their marketing money. They don't want to wait and say we're building a brand, but we know how important building a brand is to having things like pricing power and consideration.
Mhm.
Those are people that work exclusively on those conversations, where I work more across functions to say, this is a direction the company should go. Once they kind of narrow it down to say, yes, a big brand or going really deep in AI, there's other people that I pull on that are much more into just solving those areas.
How do companies get to work with you, Neil? Like you say, you get a phone call at 7
Yeah,
o'clock on Tuesday night. I mean, not
they're
everybody
fun.
has your phone number. So how do they get to work with you? Like, are you assigned companies through Google? Like, you're going to work with this company. They have problems. They need your
I try not to be. I try
Okay.
not to be. I don't want to be a consultant that's like, and you give X hours to this company. This is the way we look at it, which is informative to a lot of companies that are looking at how they scale these types of processes. A lot of companies are resource driven. They'll say you have X number of hours a week. Here's the top prospects in the top companies. Here's how you assign your time. And then they look at a utilization rate. We want everyone to be X% utilized of 90% of your time talking to clients, et cetera. It's like a law firm consultancy model. We actually opt for something else, which evolved over years of trial and error, which is we'll handle nearly every request that comes in.
Okay.
So we won't turn anyone away at the gate. I think coming out and saying these are our priority accounts are nice, but I think it's limiting because it's very difficult from a quantitative side to say who has the most potential. Is it just what the sales team say? Is it how much money they spent yesterday or how much money they could spend tomorrow?
Oh, okay.
What we'll do is we'll handle all inbound requests, which is we encourage every company, every partner we work with, every contact to raise their hand and say, I could use some help. And then what we do is we use it as a function to say, how do we evolve and scale our processes to make sure that we can satisfy everyone? So if you use a classic utilization model, the problem with it is the way you scale is by adding more employees.
Right.
But you really don't pressure test the model. So instead, we say, we're going to handle 100% of the requests. And these are the quality indicators we meet. And then we look at all the demand, and demand well outpaces the supply that we have.
Right.
And then that challenges us to say, how do we improve and scale these processes so that we can deliver the same quality of service? So here's kind of the way I'd think about it, because it touches on something that oftentimes companies struggle with, which is scaling their business. Now, Silicon Valley,
Right.
scale is one of those words that I think in every meeting you have to drop at least a half dozen times for that meeting to be official. Like if you don't mention scale or now AI at least a half dozen times,
Yeah.
then that meeting wasn't big and
Yeah. What are you
important.
doing? What are you doing?
Yeah, be like,
What
"Look,
are you
look,
talking
no,
about?
and it's also like the answer to everything. It's like, how are you gonna make more money? Well, it's easy. Scale. And nobody goes any further than that. It's just scale itself is the answer.
Scale
But
with AI. We're
yeah,
gonna
scale
scale.
with AI. We need AI to scale. And
Yeah.
it's yes, yes, I will invest. And so I'll look at this more pragmatically. Here's the example I'll give you. Say you're running a restaurant, right? First day of the restaurant, you're new, but you're ambitious. So you can only have one table and you hope you get one customer and that customer comes in. Now, they're the only customer you're going to have that night. So 100% of your time and attention is going to be dedicated to that customer, seeing to every one of their needs,
Right.
right? Now you're doing really well and that customer's happy. You make a little bit of money. Next week, you have two tables and you have two people filling those tables. Okay. All right. Well, now you have double the work, but you're committed and you're like, you know what? I'm going to deliver the same type of experience that got me that second customer. I'm going to deliver it to them both. I'm not going to let them down.
Right.
Well, now you're becoming more successful. Now you have 10 tables. Now you have 100
Yeah.
tables. Now you have that scaling problem. Now, what my commitment is to make sure that that 10th, that 100th, that 1,000th customer, this is a scaling problem we're solving for, receives the same amount of attention, the same, let's say, the same experience, the same outcomes as when we only had one customer. That is achieving true scale. What too many companies do is they move towards a volume play. They say, well, we're going to standardize menus and we need to hire less experienced servers. And maybe we'll use frozen food in our restaurant and we need to hurry up prep time. And they dilute the experience, but they say, look, we're reaching more people. We must scale. No, you just diluted the product to reach volume. We look at it really intently to say, how do we solve that scale problem by keeping the same level of experience, the same outcomes, just with as many people as the market demand requires.
Okay. So, what does the process actually look like when you're working with a company? Companies want to work with Google, they want to work with you. Maybe you select a project because you're interested in it. You're going to work with this company. You have
Mhm.
this large format meeting, executives, you learn about their problems, their business problems. What's your process for helping them solve those problems?
Well, for the initial meeting, oftentimes it's exactly what you said, but it has to do more with the problems themselves.
Yeah.
So companies will come through and they may say, look, our problem is we need more customers, we need more sales,
Yeah.
right? That's our problem.
Okay.
Really behind the scenes, it may be the fact to say, look, you have all the data and all the opportunities you need to grow your business internally at the same cost, but you're not surfacing those opportunities effectively. Or it could be your board has biases towards what they're driving. I'll give you an example. A retailer that had big ambitions, we want to grow, scale. They had, if you could believe this, a required 24-hour ROI on all of their marketing spend,
Wow.
which meant every day their marketing team needed to go back to their finance team and say,
Okay.
you gave us this amount of money on Tuesday. This is how much revenue we drove for you in the past 24 hours before we can get more money. They can't do anything to build a brand. Even the hesitant customer that may take, if you take 48 hours to think about a purchase,
Yeah.
you don't count towards that ROI. Now they're looking at to say, we need to grow within these constraints. Oftentimes we say, look, there's systemic issues here that are preventing you from growing given the current resources.
Mhm.
Let's identify what those constraints are. Let's figure out a path and a story to move forward. And let's bring in the right resources from Google to help you unlock that.
Okay.
How do you change the ROI? And by the way, this isn't knocking down the finance team, but
Mhm.
it's now going to the finance team and saying, what are the constraints you're under that require you to set these 24-hour deadlines?
Mhm.
And then how do we come in to help finance meet their requirements to unlock the value of marketing? Where does Google technology fit? If it does, and if it doesn't, that's fine. Where do our product teams come in? How can we perhaps help you measure to make sure that ROI is coming in
Okay.
to be able to fix it?
Got it.
But oftentimes it's being able to go through, and this is where the larger perspective helps,
Yeah.
is that if you're sitting in a company and someone comes and says, this is the way we do things, and sometimes we'll come in and we'll say, we've compared against thousands of companies. You're the first company that has ever done this. That provides something for us to lean into and to say, this process could be fixed or broken. And
Mhm.
I'm not saying that it's easy, but oftentimes it's that idea to say, when I ask companies what their problems are, their responses are often different than what's actually holding them back. And that's the opportunity, right? They're unaware of where their functions, their processes, and their strategies are veering in a different direction from the rest of the market.
Mhm.
And if we can highlight that, usually we can find simple changes and awareness to say,
Okay.
let's try going in this direction in a structured way, and then we're going to make some money doing it.
Okay. You speak with the company, you identify their problems, you get an understanding, you get the context. Then your job is to develop a strategy and bring in the relevant folks from Google to help solve the problems.
Yes. Where
Okay.
we can.
And
Sometimes
you're,
companies can do it on their own,
oh, okay.
but in other cases, like I said, when we were talking about the specialists, we may say, look, in order to do this, if you're moving past, and I'm going to go down this example, although now it's fictitious with that 24-hour ROI.
Yeah.
Great. Now you're looking more long term. You're going to need a strategy to build your brand, to make sure people consider your products. We're going to make sure you have the branding people there to support you. And they're not there. The branding people follow the same mindset I do. They're not there to sell Google ads. They're there to say, this is how you do branding in the right way. And if our products help you, then they're going to help you make more money. And if they don't, we need to fix our products. But they come in first with that mindset to say, you want to build branding. Here's best in class branding, Google or not. Sometimes it's, we need to get a better technology layer. We can't measure a report. Well,
Right.
okay, who are the best people we know internally or sometimes externally? Sometimes other consultancies have to come in because they fill that gap. In those types of engagements, the role we then pivot to play is we need to translate what the business problem is to these other stakeholders.
Right.
To say, look, Deloitte, Accenture, you may have spoken to this company, they may have said they want to do AI. Okay, no, AI should not be your strategy. Here's the company's strategy. They're trying to deliver this to their customers.
Right.
Here's a part where AI can help to accelerate that strategy. Can we get this one piece in place? And I don't want 12 months. I want it in place in 2 weeks. That's the role we play because sometimes we have to push. We'd be like, I know this can get done, but the company themselves can marshal that through.
When you're talking to a company, developing a strategy, helping develop a solution, is it always Google products that you recommend? Is that part of your job to basically say, Google has a product that will help you with this? Or can you actually recommend non Google products and services if it's the right fit?
I'll recommend the best product on the market.
Okay.
And if it's not a Google product, then that feedback goes directly to our product teams and engineers to say, this is what we need to fix.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, trust is destroyed if a customer comes in and they think the solution to any of their problems, AI or in broader areas of strategy, end with a Google product. In an ideal place, our products meet those needs, so they do.
Right.
But if they don't, I have the responsibility to tell them what products are going to get them there and then to fix ours so that way they can be the ones that we recommend.
Okay.
And so that's kind of the way that I do it is, and oftentimes companies will come to me and they say, is this the best? And I will lay out the case. These are the pros. These are the cons. This is what I would do if I were sitting there. And most of the times Google products are fantastic. And sometimes just awareness. I didn't know you could do this.
Yeah.
But if there's clearly a better fit for a product or another approach they should be taking, then they should do that as well. I
Okay.
won't stop them from that. I'll actually encourage them to do it with hopes to say, hey, when we get this stuff fixed in this area where we're not meeting your need, I hope you'll come back to me. And then I'll be honest with you about the progress we're making so that we can just continue from that point.
I like that answer. So let's talk about your book, Converted. For
Yeah.
those unfamiliar, what is it all about?
It touches on the general themes we've been covering, which is, building for customers, strategies for building the customers. But in my world, it touches on time that I spent, which is really understanding specific customer relationships.
Mhm.
And I'll give you the brief thesis behind it. A lot of companies are under pressure for short-term results, short-term metrics. And again, I respect and understand the reasons for it. But the book builds a case, and not only a case, but a blueprint for why it is more effective to be able to measure and optimize towards long-term value.
Okay.
So I like to tell stories. I tell one in the book, which is appropriate because relationships work very well, both in real life and with customers.
Mhm.
But I paint just using the analogy that it's like proposing to a lot of customers on the first date. That may be what we're looking for. We're looking for that
Yeah.
partner. We
Yeah.
want that really strong call to action. I
Right.
joke about it. Marry me now.
Yeah.
And then when we put that into real life context, we're like, well, that's weird as shit.
Yeah.
Like, shouldn't we get to know people a little bit and be like, no, 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 no. Our KPI for the evening is how many acceptances to proposals did we get?
There's no
So we
time.
go in hyper optimized, being like, well, the solution to this is proposing to as many people at the lowest possible price. And then we go back and we're like, we got 3% of people to accept, and we're happy with ourselves.
Wow.
But are these the right people for us?
Right.
Right? Are they going to be more problems, more costs long term than they're worth?
Yeah.
And the argument is that, at least from my experience, that most companies are just going down this process because that's what they've done night after night, month after month, quarter after quarter. And we take a step back and we say, intuitively, that building customer relationships is important as a benefit. You can see the customers that are worth it, the customers that are not. You can prioritize your products and your marketing resources, your customer service towards the relationships that are worth it.
Mhm.
You can put the rest kind of on the back burner, so to speak. And so they know the intuition. So the book really fills that gap to say, this is how you make the transition. We'll talk about the technical side, about the gaps in most businesses from a marketing lens. We'll also talk in the last third of the book about the cultural components. How do you get people to change the KPIs that they're looking at or to trust the data that you have
Yeah.
to make this transition happen? And so it's meant really just to be a simple toolkit to inspire people to say, not only does this need to get done, but this is some best in class guidance as to how I might go about doing it.
What's a realistic first step for a company that has data, probably lots of data, and they're
Yeah.
not yet using it for anything? I know this is less common, but they're
Yeah.
not using it for anything. Like, what's the good first step? Is it not to even think about the data? Is it to think about the problem?
That's where I go. I
Okay.
generally go and I say, this is the worst in class, but most common amongst
Yeah.
businesses. They spend a lot of time being very meticulous about capturing all of their data. And then also with the help of the B2B vendors, branding it as something ambitious and unique, right? It's not a data warehouse. It's a data lake.
Right.
Yes, yes, a data lake. That sounds much more expansive. We're
Mm.
growing in real estate. The same bullshit.
Yeah.
And then they have that, and then they hand this over and they say, look at how much time and love and investment we put. And then they hand it over to some very talented data scientists. And then they're like, our job is done. You data scientists do data science to the data. And you're like, what? And then the data scientists are like, all right, what did we learn in school? I know, dashboards.
Yeah.
So I put the shit together in a whole bunch of dashboards where nobody's ever happy. And then the sales and marketing people look at it and like, what the hell do I do with this? They don't do anything with it. Then the data science people are like, we're not data driven because they don't use our dashboards, but we'll just keep making more dashboards. And the world falls apart until a B2B company pitches and says the reason why it's not working is it's not your data lake isn't big enough. You need a data universe or some shit. Build more. And then you do a whole bunch of front end investments and the process repeats.
And there's probably some newer term for that now anyways, right? I think data lakes.
That's what we do. Well, that's the easiest way to sell is you sell this planned obsolescence. Yeah. It's like, we have a CRM. You may have a CRM, but do you have a CDP? And you're like, oh shit, this is something new. No, it's just rebranded. Although I will tell you, following this episode, I'm going to get a whole bunch of angry emails from people being like, these are all the differences of the CDP. No, it's the same thing and none of them work. But what we really want to do is, hey, let's start with what are the hypotheses that we have. Now, I am different than problems, right? Problems are things we need to actively fix. Those are in a category they may or may not need to be addressed. Legal can give you problems. Right. Hypotheses are channels, opportunities, ideas for growth. What are things that we could do? And I'm very careful here to say there's no right or wrong answers. I just care, again, about the hypotheses. Right. Now, it's not to say all are equal. I'm going to stack rank them and say, look, some came from a customer. Some came from my mom who's never been to your store. Others came from academics or conferences or partners that we think are a little bit more vetted. But I want those hypotheses. And then I move to that second question. I take those hypotheses over to the data people. And I say, do we have the data to prove or disprove this hypothesis? Right. And now all of a sudden, their efforts become focused. I want to judge this data lake warehouse universe thing by how well can it address to help me prove or disprove the hypotheses that I have. And I judge the culture by how quickly can you help me gather the data that I need to say, is this a viable path for our business to move forward? Mm-hmm. Now everybody has a role to play. For the people that are closest to the customers, I want to know what those hypotheses are, ideas for change and for growth. For new hires, what do you see in our company that you didn't see in your previous companies? What's broken or different that we're missing? I don't want to lose any of those because that's the reason I hire great people. Mm-hmm. Then I go to the data scientists. Help me make this real. Help me reduce risk. And then I will be responsible for acting. But I prefer that pipeline instead of let's collect a bunch of data. Mm-hmm. Let's hope the dashboards tell us the answer. And let's hope I can drive momentum on that. It's too fragmented. It never works. And everyone just gets frustrated doing it and says, our data doesn't work. I hate dashboards. My company's not data driven. To, I'm a leader that manages a process that makes sure we find the right ideas. Mm-hmm. We invest in reducing the risk and the outcomes. And then we have the capabilities to implement.
So you start with the hypothesis or hypotheses, then you identify the data to support the hypothesis.
Yeah.
What if the data is not there?
What if you need to
don't have the right data, right? It's a problem. Do you go back to step one? Do you chase?
They need to test. Yeah. You know what? And the way you highlighted too, you're working on this. This is not an original moment where it's Neil being like, yes, this will work. What we're doing is we're adapting things that work in other disciplines, specifically the scientific method.
Yeah.
The only thing we're doing is we're front loading the data. Generally, the scientific method, the hypothesis, the experiment, then you analyze the data. But here we're saying we already have data, so we can put it in front. But then you run a test. It's saying if the gap between what we have and what we understand already, what we've done in previous tests and capturing data is insufficient for making a decision or reducing the risk to where we're comfortable moving forward, what are the channels we have for capturing that additional data? Now, experimentation is a powerful key. Sometimes it's partnerships. Sometimes I'll be in a room where a company will say, we're headed in this direction.
Yeah.
We have a lot of data. It will take us another year to gather more data on our own. Mm-hmm. Google, do you have anything that can speed that up? We have other relationships where they're very clear. They say, we don't want to see a single product slide. Don't pitch us. What we want are all your hypotheses. What are things you may do? We want to look at those and then we'll say, do we have the data to get ahead?
Mhm.
And that's the way they look at the world. They want new ideas. They don't want products. For them, products and solutions are the very last step,
Yeah.
implementing that option. They're
Yeah.
saying, no, we're in front of that. We want the ideas, and that's how we're going to win.
Yeah. I feel like the products, the tools, the services, that's almost the easier part, right?
It
Coming up.
is. It
It's
is. And isn't it perverse now when you think about how bizarre that the software cycle has been reversed predictably, because this is what marketing does, but instead, here's the problem you didn't know you had, and here's a
yeah.
software solution that fixes it. And you're like, oh, well, that's great. And then you get bogged down for 8 to 12 months on a software implementation, and it didn't really drive to the growth you were hoping for.
Right.
That's how it goes.
What tools, either at Google, internal to Google or not, do you use most often in your day-to-day work? What tools are you using?
I try to avoid every tool imaginable.
Okay.
Honestly, if people are like, oh, you spend a lot of time on email. I hate email. If I can get down to checking email twice a day, that's fine. If I can use a dumb phone, I'll do it. Here's why. We have reached a point where right now, most companies, most people have too many tools. They have too much information.
Oh,
They
that's
have too many opportunities, too
yeah.
much data. And what they lack is the ability to think deeply and focus attention on any of them. As soon as you start thinking about a project or a problem in the market, what happens? Another email, another meeting. So I always look at this competitively. I say, if I'm working against people in this space, and again, you can put the large consultants, anybody that is an alternative besides talking to me,
Mhm.
if the standard working practices of those people are to surround themselves with every possible tool and every possible AI model, not
Mhm.
to say they don't have a place, then they're all likely generating the same types of results. And so the question is, how can we do something differently? And so most of my time is not in tools, but in conversations, which is I don't want to query AI. I have other people that can query AI bots. What I want to do is I want to talk to other market leaders about what they're seeing. What are the early indicators? And again, going back to that, the same thing I advise for companies I do myself. I want more hypotheses.
Mhm.
But
Right.
you don't get those hypotheses sitting idly and checking your inbox. You get those hypotheses by getting out into the field to see what the problems actually are,
Yeah.
sitting amongst different stakeholders, different departments, different teams, and understanding the challenges in the language that they use. And so my tools, generally a notepad and an abundance of time in my schedule.
Mhm.
Because the more that I block things off and the more that I do, I feel productive at the end of the day because I can write down a huge to-do list.
Sure.
But I'm really just getting through the day-to-day tactics, not the larger strategies that are really going to be the big problems. And I'll tell you, part of it, by the way, is also getting other companies to do this.
Yeah.
If everybody is so focused within their own team at hitting what their objectives are for that day, for that week, for that 24-hour ROI, then they're never going to be able to take a step back to say, what are the larger changes we can make to the organization? Because we're so focused on what has to get done right here and right now.
I like your approach, keeping it simple. That said, are there specific Google tools, services that you think businesses should be adopting?
I think everything's a tool and everything has a value, right? Google Analytics is unparalleled. It's insights of understanding what's happening on the web. That's great. It's a tool if you have hypotheses that help you
I
understand
understand.
that are
Yes.
directed towards what's happening on your website.
Yeah.
I want to have that tool in place.
Yeah.
That's important. I want to use tools like Gemini. Why? Because they summarize my emails,
Yeah.
right? That's helpful. They help summarize my chats in case I can't catch up with 6 days of chats that I missed. Those are all helpful tools,
Mhm.
but I never lead with the tools themselves,
I
because
know.
what I'm doing is I'm going through that process I just lambasted with the B2B companies, where I'm creating a problem, saying companies can't do this, and here's a tool that solves it.
Yeah.
Instead, I say I want familiarity with these tools. I want to know what role they play, where they fit in my life,
Mhm.
what are the strengths and weaknesses of each.
Mhm.
So that if I get to that stage where I see an opportunity, I can go through and I can say, this is going to be the tool that's going to be quickest at addressing that problem. It's like why I play around. VEO3, video generation. I don't want to know how many thousands of dollars in credits I spent. Somebody will eventually come and tell me. I
Mhm.
don't think it's going to be a line. I don't think it would kind of be funny if I'm like an earnings call. They're like, okay, so we would have hit Wall Street's numbers, but Neil couldn't stop making videos. Now, why do it? I don't make creatives. I'm not a creative shop. I'm not putting these videos online. I do it because I want to understand the process
Right.
of what our customers are going to go through. I want to know the
Okay.
skills they need to learn for generating videos. I want to know how close that is to the reality that do we actually need creatives thinking about videos and what value they drive.
Right.
So I know the tool. I don't use the tool in my daily life. I keep up with the progress of that tool just because it makes it more robust when someone says, do I need a creative agency for video or can I just have my entire team learn VEO? And I want to be able to have an articulate answer to that about where it fits in the workflows, as well as for people that are hiring, maybe.
Mhm.
And say, well, what type of people do I hire in this era where these tools like VEO are here? Do I hire an AI person? Do I hire a prompting person? What about a creative? What value do they play?
Okay.
And having experience with the tools is there. But
Yeah.
I would be lying to you if I said every morning I sit down, I'm like, all right, let's make a 30-second spot. No, that I'm just creating work for myself that I find less useful.
Yeah, so I see you post, short demos of newer Google products.
Yes.
Is that because you see the business use case for that tool? Does that come from you? Like, oh, wow, this is a great tool. Maybe folks don't know that you can use it for this purpose. I'm going to post information about this on LinkedIn. Where does that come from?
It's primarily that channel. There's a
Okay.
lot of products that come out. And honestly, I'm overwhelmed. I get emails every day about here's another 30 products that were released.
Yeah.
Occasionally one captures my attention.
Okay.
And the thing is, when you read the official releases, the hardest part about reading any product releases is this for me. Because there's always the consumer angle, the business angle, the enterprise angle, the creative angle. And I say, you know what? What if the best value I can bring to social media, because I don't like posting pictures of myself doing things. I don't get a lot about it. Here's what I ate. Anybody cares.
Sometimes you get more
Uh,
likes though. So,
yeah, sometimes you get more likes. Great for engagement. And I like to go out there and to say, look, I found this to be useful. Let
Mhm.
me clear up a little bit of the noise and just send this out to you. And the way that the accounts are managed from Google is it is a personal account. So there's no team at Google that can come and say, Neil, you need to post this.
Okay.
And there's some teams that post and say, hey, Neil, can you announce this? And I look at the product and I'm like, no, because I wouldn't use this. So I'm not wasting anybody's time with it. But occasionally there becomes a course or a training or a small feature. Originally, Notebook LM was like this, a
Yeah.
small, I think, 6-person team that it was just kind of, hey, this is a side project. And sometimes it's just awareness to say, out of all the noise going on, here's something you should pay attention to because it may help you with one of your hypotheses. It may serve as one of those
Okay.
invaluable tools to your role.
Let's talk about your next book, Tournaments.
Yes,
What's that all about?
tournaments is answering a more of a larger, I don't want to say philosophical because people tune out, but it's answering a question to say, with all this change that we're seeing in the world, with the strategies that I've seen,
Yeah.
how do they apply in a personal context? So, a lot of the strategies that we work with in terms of making businesses great can also help people with their careers.
Hmm.
And so, it's been written not as a self help guide, but almost more of a memoir style to say, I have 2 kids. At some point, my son is going to come back to me and say, all right, Papa, I did all the things society told me. I went to school, I got good grades. What do I do now?
Yeah.
And it's written from answering that. Now, he won't graduate from college for many years. He's only 8 years old right now. But right now, I see a lot of graduates who said, look, I went to a great school. I studied hard. I got a degree in computer science, which when I came in was a hot, in demand, automatic 6-figure job. And now I enter a world where unemployment for computer science is twice as high as an art history major.
Yeah.
I have people telling me computer science is going to be obsolete. I've applied for 100 jobs. If you saw the New York Times last weekend, they talked about a woman who was graduating computer science, and now she's interviewing and was turned down for a job from Chipotle.
Mhm.
And by the way, we're not talking computer science at Chipotle. We're talking line worker at
Right.
Chipotle, not using her degree. And she's like, well, shit, now what do I do?
Mhm.
Now, there's not a lot of answers if you simply say you go after this degree or not. I think, again, those are tactics. But it happens to be that a lot of the strategies that businesses are confronted with when they're confronted with dynamic competitors or changing market conditions, those work at a very personal level.
Mhm.
And so that entire book is about simplifying it to say, through some fun stories, because I love telling them, here's what I would do. And again, written from the perspective, again, if my son comes to me and says, well, what do? I don't want to say, here's a degree you pursue,
Right.
right? Or here's a school you go to, or here's the job I would take. It's here's how to think about that problem. So
Yeah.
that way you can take your own unique background, your own
Okay.
ambitions, and find something that's satisfying for you.
What advice would you give to executives or business leaders to improve their data and AI literacy? Like, what kind of educational resources, courses, experiences, specific programs? Do you have any advice?
Generally, I tell them to sit with the data people,
Okay.
which, by the way, they find patently absurd. They're like, can I take a 30-minute webinar? Say no. One of the best engineers I worked with at Google, who built the foundation for a lot of our ad tracking technologies and
Yeah.
conversion tracking, attended a lot of sales meetings. Now, it was strange when he came in the room. If you knew who he was, it was kind of like, holy shit, dude. It's like, you should just be running this meeting. Like, what we're not presenting anything worth your time or your value to the company. And he was very clear. He's like, I'm here to learn your language
Mm,
because I don't understand it. And if I don't understand it, I can't build products for you. And so he just spent countless hours in those meetings to learn how that process played out, how the products he built were being explained by salespeople down funnel, what the assumptions that he was making versus the reality of the scenario, which actually goes full circle. People often will say in the same breath, say, how did you end up in this field? It was doing the same thing.
right.
It was when I met him, I took his advice and I just started sitting into meetings I wasn't invited in
Mm,
because I wanted that expertise to say, well, how do some of the best CEOs and boards in the world explain their problems versus the worst? And now if someone went through my calendar and said it was been more than 9 or 10,000 hours I've spent doing that. Now, I'm not saying any CEO or person who's interested in data literacy has to be that committed to it. But I find oftentimes these silos naturally emerge within organizations
mhm.
where salespeople have their language and their incentives. We're all driven by quota. And you have finance people. Finance people puzzle me. But I know the easiest way to get the respect of any finance people is one is you always frame questions as asking for color. And when all else fails, you say this will lead to a positive improvement in EBITDA, and they're impressed. We don't use EBITDA in sales, but we know what it means. The same thing with data and statistics. It's just people write it off too quickly as saying, I'm not a data person. And I think by working with data people, there's more that we have in common than not. But we have to be able to sit to force those conversations. Otherwise, the data people use the data language because it's efficient. They don't bridge and say, what's the sales language?
Right.
Common example I have is one time we were talking about the needs for building a new feature into a product. And at least for the leader of our organization at that time, it wasn't a high priority for her. Right? I don't get why this needs to get done. That's nice. The case isn't clear. It's just this toggle. And the easiest way to convince her was not to build a slide with testimonials or revenue impact, was we asked her to sit down in front of the tool and try doing it herself.
Mhm.
And then when she saw how frustrated it was, I said, this is what our customers are facing. And I don't know how to quantify it, but you experienced it firsthand. And so now you know, and now it becomes real. So
Mhm.
instead of data and data science being a subject, a technical subject, I want you to know the people on your data science team. I want you to know what they have for lunch. I want you to know what they talk about with their families, with their languages, how they present their assumptions and hypotheses, what their frustrations are working with your team.
Mhm.
And over time, what you do is you learn how to communicate and connect with them.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, data science no longer becomes intimidating. It becomes accessible. But it became accessible because you dedicated the time to learning how they do their job instead of looking at it to say, I need to learn a specific subject or expertise.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You're putting yourself into their world, into their context and their
Yes,
day to day. So you've spoken around the world.
I have.
What's a common theme or challenge you hear no matter where you go? Is it AI? Is that what it is? But
It is today.
what else?
I don't think it's a challenge. I think getting it right is a challenge. But I think
Yes.
if we look at the past 15 years, there was a time where I spoke to executives where they didn't want to believe that people would buy on their mobile devices. You can believe how far removed from that I needed an exhibit of dozens of cell phones to show a CEO how their website looks on a mobile device.
Right.
They believed nobody would ever purchase airline tickets on a cell phone, right? We had those times. We had times where we thought the metaverse
Right.
would be a multi-trillion-dollar economic opportunity, so much so that we should start buying virtual real estate for some reason. And now we have AI. The common thread through all of these is change is very hard,
Mhm.
but it's necessary for organizations to adapt and to
Mhm.
move forward. And I think oftentimes we distill change down to something simple because we understand it. We were doing A and now we do B, right? And so as I talk to companies, I see that common thread, no matter what the technology is, no matter what the problem is, it's how do we change what we're doing?
Hmm.
How do we connect with people, understand their language, understand their incentives, understand the roles that we play as leaders?
Hmm.
And sure, my presentations change in the language of the times because nobody's going to come to a presentation on change. And I'll admit that a lot of people talking about change do it because they don't know what the hell they're talking about. And it sounds like a good idea. The same with AI.
Right.
It seems like 90% of experts who are Web3 experts on LinkedIn have moved to AI experts. But you do need to have a cause to rally around because it's not enough to say, I want to learn change. It's I want to learn how to change within the context of the world today.
Right.
I want to learn how to change during COVID. I want to learn how to change during a possible recession. I want to change during a time of tariffs. I want to change during a time of AI. So
Hmm.
our context changes, but that thread remains the same. When you have somebody that built a program that they're proud of, and now all of a sudden you want to change where their program may get more resources or less, right?
Hmm.
Any transformation involves reallocating resources. So there's winners and losers. How do you approach those people that are going to lose their priorities, their projects, their headcount
Right.
in a way that they're supportive of your efforts? How do you deal with the tension of people that have always done things a certain way versus people that see a way forward? How do you deal with that tension of people who want efficient processes that reduce risk and save money for the company
Hmm.
against those that are entrepreneurial that are saying, if we could only move quicker, we're going to break shit, we would see outsized rewards and are getting frustrated.
It's hard.
Those are those common languages of change that I would say any leader today needs to be able to master. And this is, I'll tell you, I'll share you the lesson. You don't even need to come to a lecture. I'll tell you what you need to do. Maybe you should come to a lecture because they're fun and we have a great time. But a lot of people figure that there's a right answer. Right? The right answer is we need to be efficient. The right answer is we need to be more entrepreneurial. The best leaders I work with in managing this change, the ones that are making the best progress in terms of technology, AI, and data, are ones that realize that their only job as leaders is to manage the tension on both sides.
Mm.
The efficiency people or the conservative minded people want to keep doing things the way they are. And there's a hell of a lot of value there. And then you have people say, we need to move faster and we need to adopt more tools and forget about what we did in the past. And they're also right. And so, how do you keep the tension so that you get the best out of both sides instead of forcing them to an uncomfortable average where you lose the best benefits of both groups?
Mm.
Those are what the leaders can do. They can say, this is how we can keep our traditional processes and everything we've built and are bulletproof, but we can still go to AI. Here's how we can automate our systems, but
Right.
reward and invest in our people. That's the tension they need to learn how to manage. That's what I like to see for the groups that I work with.
I love how you describe that. Great leaders are able to manage change and tension.
That's all it is. But it's also, I'm actually going to simplify it more. They need to recognize that that tension's okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of leaders out there, and I'm sure people listening to this
Oh,
that
right.
think
Yeah.
that tension needs to be resolved. I'm uncomfortable in this
Right.
space. We need to fix this once and for all. And then they go through and they're like, so what we're going to do is build role profiles for everybody that's going to say, this is your job and this is what's expected to you. Or like, and I don't know, you become Ray Dalio and you just write a book to be like, and this is how we're going to run our firm. And that's how they want to manage their culture. That's fine.
Right.
But I say it's more helpful to say this is just going to be an uncomfortable thing because if you're really building a diverse organization that values people's different opinions, where
Mhm.
those opinions conflict is where that tension and that conflict will be.
Yep.
And it's easier to manage it and to set the expectations to say, we're going to have this tension than to say, my
Right.
job as a leader to resolve it.
Yeah.
You know, in a small example, and this may make it even more approachable. One of the conversations I have with anybody that reports to me on the very first day is I say this, and I'm very clear to them. I say, we are not retiring together. And they're like, what? And I'm like, no. I'm like, at one point, you and I will sit here and we're going to have a conversation. It's going to be one of two conversations. Either one is you're leaving me or I'm leaving you. And hopefully both for a better opportunity. So if you see something better for yourself, I don't want you to freak out and be like, I need to tell Neil that I'm leaving the team.
Right.
And I don't want to do the thing where I'm looking for a new job and I'm like, oh, now I got to reveal it to the team. I'm telling you, that is an absolute certainty that one of those circumstances will result. So now that we accept that that is going to happen, let's not be stupid about it. I want to find you your next big opportunity. You certainly want to find your next big opportunity. Let's collaborate on that together instead of you sitting there thinking, well, if I tell Neil I'm applying for a new internal job, he's not going to trust me on his team.
Right.
No, I'm diffusing that. We're going to have that tension. It's going to exist. You're going to do it, or I'm going to do it. Whoever it is first has that conversation.
Mhm.
But now let's move past that. Same thing. You're an efficiency minded consultant. You're an entrepreneur who hates every single process in our business. Great. We're not going to see eye to eye on this
Yeah.
process. You're going to claim he's wasting money. You're going to claim the other person's going too slow. Great. Let's figure out how we can manage that so we're still doing what we want, accepting that we're both going to get the best out of the other side, or we're both going to be equally unhappy, but the organization is going to be better.
That's great. You ready for the lightning round?
Go, hit me.
30 seconds each.
Oh boy.
A business
Ready.
thinker or strategist you admire.
Business thinker or strategist that I'm. You know what? I like Pete Fader.
Okay. I know.
You have done an interview with Pete. I love Pete. Pete
Okay.
has opened my eyes. What I love, and I give this to academics as a whole. When we talk about bridging areas, academics understand everything that we are feeling, and they have the data behind it. In my world, people like him, especially him,
Yeah.
have always been foundational at connecting the dots. They give me the data to what I'm seeing on the intuition.
Yeah. Pete's great. Favorite international city you've spoken in?
Favorite international city I've spoken to. You know what? I'm going to get all groups being upset with this. I'm going to give you the worst non-answer ever. I love all of them because of what I take away. I love the working cultures of every place I go to. I love the businessy interactions. I find them challenging. I find them unique, and I love them all for that. Whether it's Dubai, Sydney, Tokyo, I take all of them. And I'll tell you, one of my favorite though. I love, at least when I work with the Japanese, they are phenomenal, but they're so kind. They never disagree with me, so I always leave the meetings feeling great.
Right.
Because they're overly polite and everything, which I
Right.
love, and I love the structure, the decorum. Harder to get easy answers from them,
Yeah.
because they don't want to disagree. But I find it challenging and I find it respectful, and I love that. But every city I've been to, I've taken away something unique from the people and the culture that I wouldn't trade for any other place.
One concept from Converted you wish every company would adopt tomorrow.
I just wish that they knew the lifetime value of their customers. Now, we didn't talk about lifetime value, but really that's understanding the long-term potential of any customer. Even if they don't act on it, I wish they knew, because it provokes that conversation to say, what are we doing to treat these valuable customers differently, to avoid those customers? Who are we listening to more or not? It's one of those like little cards you pull out at the dinner table that's like, hey, have we thought about this?
Yeah.
And lifetime value is probably the most provocative one we have.
One trend in AI you're most excited about.
One trend I'm excited about, I would say the teaching and education models. I see
Okay.
the world certainly needs more teachers, but what it also needs is it needs teachers to focus on what they do best, which I don't think is building slides or coming out with bullet points. I think it's actually attending to the needs of the students, understanding, almost being that translation layer for students
Right.
between what are the needs of the students in the marketplace. I'm thinking now at higher levels of education than younger, but also where are the gaps where the learning is insufficient.
Mm-hmm.
See, I don't think AI can help in those areas. I think we can ask AI questions, but I think oftentimes we struggle to articulate why we can't grasp a particular subject, why we're struggling with math or reading.
Right.
But I think teachers form that, not only that empathetic, but encouraging layer of understanding the needs of different people in a way that AI will never be able to replace.
Mm-hmm.
So I love the role it fills in the education side of being able to offload the more tedious, less value driving work of teachers so they can focus on what they do best.
Yeah. Notebook LM can take care of your slides anyways.
Exactly. Exactly.
Favorite underrated analytics metric.
I'm still going to go back to CLV,
Okay.
but I'll add an additional layer onto it so it doesn't sound repetitive. I think the problem with CLV in certain metrics is that people aren't aware of what it can and cannot do.
Mm-hmm.
And so oftentimes is when you look at a metric and you simply try to distill the world down by new users. Right? I had this conversation with a hotel chain one time. I sat down, and before any meeting, I stay at their hotel. Right? I came in next time, and I was like, it's like, so what are your KPIs? And I said, well, one of our driving one is we're looking for new members to our loyalty program. That means we're growing new customers.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that is phenomenal. I was like, I signed up last night. It's like, great. He's like, is this your first time staying at one of our properties? I said, no. I said, I stay at your properties quite frequently, but when I want free Wi-Fi, it says join our program or call down to the front desk, give them your number, and then we'll press some buttons and we'll activate your free Wi-Fi. And to be honest, signing up was a lot easier. I'm probably a new customer 15 different times.
Mm,
So what does that new customer metric really mean?
right.
It means how many times somebody signed up and knowing the strengths and weaknesses of that. So this could inflate or deflate those numbers. And so I think with any metric, CLV in particular, but we could apply it to anything, the value comes from really taking a step back and saying, what does this number really mean? Talking to those data scientists and say, if I wanted you to poke holes in this metric,
Hmm.
what could you do? And then this is the hardest part with these metrics, being able to take a step back, taking a deep breath, realizing you probably made a whole bunch of bad decisions based on what you now learned about that metric,
Hmm.
and then having the confidence to move forward. That's where a lot of people, those would be like, so wait, new customers includes people that signed up for Wi-Fi multiple times? Yes. So what the hell have we been tracking for the past 3 quarters?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then they sit there and they have that kind of moment. Option A, keep doing what you're doing. Option B, the harder one. And now what do we change to move forward?
Yeah.
But to take that deep breath and to say every metric I think is undervalued once you realize what goes into it.
I love how prepared you came to that discussion by staying in the hotel and
Oh, you have
going
to
through the
consider the
process.
opposite. Consider the opposite. It's like you come in and be like, so you stayed at our brand last night? No, I stayed at your competitors.
Right.
Because that's like, what don't you like about our brand? And you have to dance around it and be like, I don't know, the logo. You always do that, but it also allows it to put into context because you will see the strengths and weaknesses of the organization, the consistency of the
Right.
training, the utilization of technology. What's the guest experience? I can't talk about it if I've never been a guest myself. That
What's
said, I really hope more luxury brands come and visit. So people that run St. Regis, Four
yeah.
Seasons, look forward to seeing y'all again soon.
What's something you've changed your mind about recently?
Changed my mind, I would say more about the approach. And I have a heavy bent in education. I've been changing my mind about the approaches that schools are taking to AI. And I say that not because I have a firm opinion, but just because I've been challenged on it. I've known a lot of schools that have said, we are strict at limiting AI from our curriculum.
Mhm.
So that way students can learn the foundations, how to do the work themselves. It's like I could give my son a calculator at school, but I want him to learn math
Right.
first. And I was over at Harvard Business School, and they told me how they actually buy all their students a Chat GPT academic subscription.
Hmm.
And they encourage them to load their case studies into this tool before they come to class.
Hmm.
And I said, but I thought a lot of it was reading and doing the analysis. And their professors are arguing that no, it allows them to move into more substantive discussions because instead of saying we're going to spend a third of the class restating facts and the stories of the case so everybody
Right.
understands where they are, they can use AI tools to do that quicker.
Mm.
Now, when we talk about uncertainty decisions, I will point out that when I was at Harvard Business School for Executive Education, their academic policy for those students is strictly no AI whatsoever. And
Okay.
so the professors teaching the class are rather confused to say, wait a minute, we're telling our students to use AI, but we're telling as executives not to use AI. What do we believe?
Yeah.
And so I was saying this, that's been a question where I'm like, I'm not exactly sure what I believe. What is my hypothesis? What data do I have? And how is this going to emerge? But I'm glad I have the idea because it's something that I spend a lot of time thinking about.
Yeah, it's a difficult discussion, especially since you have young kids and you're working within universities for older kids. I have young kids and older kids. Uh,
What's the value? And I know the answer, but I want more data.
yeah.
I want more hypotheses about what we could do.
What's your favorite band right now?
Favorite band? Wow. I'm trying to pick something that's more modern, that's not dated.
Whatever came to mind.
But I could tell you on rotation in the car routinely. Oasis, just because they're back on tour.
Okay.
Foo Fighters was great. I saw them down in LA for a concert. Coldplay. Sadly, Baby Shark continues in the rotation, so I'm trying to keep up with the kids. They've aged out of it, but it still comes back.
But you still love it, so you play it.
It brings back memories. I was like, kids, remember when you were one and this was all you wanted to listen to? And they're like, not anymore. And of course, so naturally, since they made me listen to it 1,000 times over on the way to school, I let them. So it's kind of like a nice retribution. I'm not sure if that's getting into favorite artists. But that's where I'm at. And that if all
Great.
else fails is just a relaxing day, well, then you're going to go to the greats, which means you're going to go jazz, probably Miles Davis, which was on earlier today.
Very nice. An activity you do outside of work.
Cooking
Okay.
is probably the most common. Yeah, cooking, anything I can do outdoors. So spent a lot of time over the summer fishing, just got back from Yosemite.
Oh, okay.
Anything that gets away from computers. It's
Yeah.
like cooking. You can't think about working inboxes. You need to focus on what you're doing at that time.
Yeah.
I find that to be incredibly relaxing.
Great. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks again for inviting me. Thanks again for dealing with my crazy schedule.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
If you need anything else, you know where to find me. Till next time. Cheers.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for watching. If you like this, be sure to subscribe. More interviews and demos coming soon.